Hi, I'm Chrissy Cordingley, and this is my show, The Flare Up Show, and this special episode is produced in partnership with Clarissa, Burt, and in the Limelight Media. I originally created this show to advocate for myself through chronic illness, but today it's grown into a wellness show that's listened to all over the world. I love to practice well-being for the whole being. So if you're ready to rise, thrive, and elevate your life, stay tuned, enjoy the show, and thanks for listening. All right, welcome to the Flare Up Show. This show is produced by the amazing Clarissa Burt and in the Limelight Media. And today I have Carlamay Sheremata. And she has over 2 decades of dedicated service navigating the diverse landscape of law enforcement, contributing her skills to various specialty units. And as a passionate advocate for empowerment of women and youth, Carlamay worked tirelessly to uplift and support those around her. Her journey has been marked by resilience, overcoming the challenges of surviving cancer, embracing single parenthood, and navigating the complexities of a PTSD diagnosis. Beyond her commitment to law enforcement, she channeled her experiences into a compelling narrative. Through writing her book, The Youth Truth, Engaging in Conversations That Can Change Lives, she strives to bridge the generational gap, shedding light on what the youth yearn from their parents, teachers, and friends to comprehend. It's her endeavor to amplify the voices of younger generation and facilitate meaningful conversations that transcend the conventional boundaries of communication. Welcome, Carlamay. Very excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I love this. I love the focus on the youth. Myself, I have a 15-year-old and a brand new 18-year-old. And that's one of the things that I remember thinking about when they were teenagers is really trying to make spaces to have conversations that my parents didn't have with me that would have really been appreciated. So I'm really excited to hear how you got connected with youth. But I want to go right back to you and to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, where you come from, and what your journey has been, just sort of an overview, and then we'll get into the details.
Sure. Well, I'll do a Coles Notes version. So I'm coming from you from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I was born in Edmonton, which is about 3 hours north from us, and moved to Calgary when I was in 81, so when I was 5 years old. And I always was different. I never fit in kind of to any, popularity group or anything. I was very musical, very creative, came from a very musical background. Mom is an opera singer. Dad's an accountant, but he did our sound when we would sing around town. And I always wanted to be able to show how, my difference. But of course, between bullying and not fitting in, excuse me, you tend to kind of go into a shell. So as I was growing up, continued on with my music and had an opportunity to go to Nashville when I was 19, did some singing there, came back and took my psych and sociology degrees and a minor in music. Really wanted to work in the schools with the girls, with just empowering girls, even from back then. But I was told I had to go and get a teaching degree. I did not want to be a teacher. And so I ended up going into oil and gas because we're in Calgary. So, and did PR and marketing for a number of years. Ended up kind of looking at seeing as a woman, I couldn't move up back then. This was about 30 plus years ago. Couldn't move up to a higher position at that point. But I wanted to go into something where men and women did the same jobs and made the same amount of money. Now, I'm not like a bra burning, rah, rah, that type of woman, but I think that both men and women have so much to offer. And if we worked more together, especially within some of these companies, man, we could have some amazing, amazing things happen. So I thought policing would be like, why not? And I had done, some private investigation and some law courses in school, and always loved watching cop shows. So within 2 months of applying, I had been accepted. During that time, though, I got a diagnosis of cervical cancer. So I kind of had to go through trying to figure out and maneuver, am I going to continue on with going through the process of the policing or continue on with treatment? And I decided to do both. And so went through extreme 6 week of radiation treatments and they got it, which was wonderful. Plus, I got into the police. So it was kind of a win-win situation. And then spent the next 21 plus years in a career I loved, absolutely loved. I got to go through, I was a school resource officer for 8.5 years, so worked in the high schools. I had an opportunity to work in behavioral science, um, child abuse, sex crimes, domestic conflict unit, child at risk response team, professional standards, so on the street, of course, because that's where everybody starts off. And I was able to have an impact in so many different ways, and people had such an impact on me. So that kind of was my life in a nutshell. And a year and a half, or I guess May of 2023, is when I retired. And a year and a half before that, I had gotten a diagnosis of PTSD. So went through treatment with that, and trying to again maneuver kind of what the new normal for myself was going to be. You never get fixed, of PTSD. Little triggers will always come. You forget words, you know what you want to say, but sometimes it doesn't come out. But realizing that how I can use myself now in a very different way. So writing a book, doing speaking now, and just being able to have an impact again in other ways than policing.
I love that. I always love these stories of how we get to where ultimately we want to be and the vision that we had for ourselves working with youth as an example, but how it was such a different path and how we always envision it as a straight line. But then when we when we
It's
actually
like
get there, we're
this.
like, wow, that was quite the journey. It was like, whoa,
Yeah,
that was very cool. Lots of side quests going on there. It was pretty awesome.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. So now let's talk about, so now you're focused. Now it's always been in you, sort of that wanting to help the people that are of a certain age, the youth, especially as they struggle in a world that is so much more complex these days. They have access to so much more information and things, and it can be very troubling for them, I'm sure, to hear mixed messages all over the place. So your journey's taken you from law enforcement now to this advocacy for youth and building resilience. Was there a specific turning point that led you to focus on supporting the youth through this work that you're doing now?
I, when I look back, my heart has always been with the youth,
Hmm.
whether it been with youth groups or even just spending time with youth. And one of the biggest things I noticed when I was working in the high schools was I would have kids come to me and start talking to me about things, and then they'd break down in tears. And so when we actually got down to the nitty-gritty, many times they'd never had these conversations, like the hard conversations with their parents. They didn't know how to communicate that with their parents, or they were afraid of being judged. They were afraid sometimes stuff was shameful. When you start talking about sex, when you start talking about even suicide, depression, that kind of stuff, there still is a stigma out there. And then you look at sometimes when you come from a religious background, there's a whole lot of shame that's behind that as well. So I really took to heart what these kids were saying. And so when I would bring parents in to kind of open up the realms of these communication, to start things, even the parents were saying we don't know how to talk to our kids about some of this stuff. And now they're connecting so much with friends, social media. How do we as parents kind of maneuver in without our kids feeling judged or that we know it all, but want to still, connect with us?
Yes. Yes. It's really difficult as a parent. I mean, it's sometimes as a parent, it's interesting now as a parent now when I think about as a kid and what I was able to share or not share with my parents or what was able to occur in our relationships. A lot of it was because they didn't have the capacity due to stress or life or whatever. It wasn't an easy life for them. So
Yeah.
it makes sense, but also it has to, right? Like we have to because we're losing children and the world is changing and it's so exponentially fast. And in the public now with social media, it's really, really difficult. I want to get to your advice for parents in a little bit, but first I want to talk about like, so you worked as an officer within the schools. Was that the one, what was one really memorable encounter that you had with a youth that really highlighted that we needed to have more compassion and empathy with the younger generation?
Oh man, there are a number. Well, I'll use one that's from my book.
Yeah.
And I think no matter who we are, we're teachers, parents, whatever, we make judgment of our youth. We'll see a group come up, their pants kind of hanging down half below their butt, and belt kind of not even working as a belt.
Mhm.
And right away, it's like, oh, we make our judgments right off the bat. And in the schools, you see such a variety of youth. And until you sit down and talk with them, you have no clue what they're going through. And so one of the youth, he was 16 years old. He would come to school, never caused any issues, anything of that sort. But I kind of noticed that he was getting gaunt and kind of looking malnourished, and he was tired a lot. And so I remember one of the days I went up and just offered him a cafeteria card. So, we would give food cards out. And this was from a school that was in a more prestigious area, that kind of stuff, but we still had kids coming from different areas. And this one kid, just said, thank you so much. I haven't eaten in a few days, so I really appreciate it. And then I suddenly, again, nothing major standing out, but there was something that touched me that, of course, now I look back and I wish I would have dug a little deeper, but just kind of let him go on his way. And I'll never forget, I received a call from him at 11:30 one night stating that he was done. He was at his last wits, and he had doused his living room and himself in gasoline. And he was standing there with a lighter ready to be done with everything. So immediately you think, oh my goodness, like what's going on with this kid, mental health, what's happening? When I finally arrived and was able to talk to him, his mom was a stripper. We had no clue. There usually was never food in the house. They were living in housing. His dad was in jail, brother was in jail. He would come home, do his homework. School was a safe place for him. Again, would not even think about that. But he would lay awake each night waiting for his mom to come so he could hear that the key go in, so he knew his mom was home safe.
Yeah.
And make sure every night that when she came home, there was no new bruises, no, stuff like that. This is a 16-year-old. These are adult issues. And so when all of a sudden you start hearing this kind of stuff, man alive, we have no clue what some of our youth are going through now. And then you tack on social media on top of that, where, the amount of likes, the amount of posts somebody does, that tells that goes with their self-image, their confidence. Oh my gosh, I only got 100 likes today. There must be something wrong with me. Like it is crazy when we think about it. I have a 16-year-old boy and just got his driver's license. And so I'm feeling you, I'm understanding the age, that age category. And again, when I was 16, I try to sit back and think, what was I thinking about? What was going through my head? We didn't have a phone. Sure, it was kind of like, okay, well, are guys going to like me? Are, school? Yeah, I know I've got to do good in school, but I want to hang out with this group. And, all of these things were going on for me. But now there's so much more that is added on for our kids.
Yes. Yes. And especially if they are empathetic and compassionate, there's a lot in the world to definitely latch onto. Like we're not immune to it. We're seeing things everywhere. And I I remember when my kids were little, someone gave me the best advice. They said, even though their problems may not seem important to you, they're just as important to them as your adult problems are to you. And I just always tried to remember that I don't have to relate to their problems. I just have to act, not act, I have to believe that their emotional response means something, right? That's really important to acknowledge and meet them where they're at because that's their capacity and we need to have compassion because that helps them grow their capacity. So it may
Yes.
seem silly, things that seem silly to us as adults now are the world to them. And I remember thinking about that as a kid, going, but this is really important to me. They just don't get it, right? So
Yeah.
it is
Well,
actually that important to them, even if it seems silly to us as adults.
well, and it's interesting you say that because when new officers would come on and I would be training them, every call we went to, even if we had just been to 3 break and enter in houses or 2 domestic calls, every call was a specific call that we had to take apart from our day because that person, what just happened to them, their whole life has been uprooted. And, somebody breaking into their house, now their safe space has been invaded. And they might never have had a dealing with a police officer ever. So you might be that only one, even for giving a ticket, right? You might be that only person and only police officer that they come in contact with. So if you were in their shoes, how would you hope that a police officer would treat you and treat the situation? And
Hmm.
that is such good advice that you had said, even with our kids, because we are so quick to have that answer for them. Or, yeah, well, I dealt with that. Well, maybe you did, but it's not the same as what our kids are dealing with. And again, um, what that little thing of maybe even a breakup, that little thing that we're like, there's lots of fish in the sea, right? Well, their whole world has just been turned upside down,
Yes.
right? So yeah, the empathy and compassion, oh my goodness, that is such a huge thing.
It really is. It really is. And with everything that you've been through, and in some of the work that I do, there are pieces where I work with trauma-informed leadership and that type of thing. And with everything that you went through, one of the biggest symptoms of PTSD can be compassion fatigue, which actually appears like apathy. But you didn't go that route. You dug deeper into your empathy and compassion. So PTSD, single parenting, even cancer, how do these experiences shape you to approach conversations, especially with the people that you work with, on resilience? Like, what kept you in the empathy zone instead of getting to the fatigue zone where you're like, you know what, I just can't care anymore?
Well, I think I went through the fatigue zone after my divorce, uh, probably a good couple months.
Mhm.
There was fatigue that hit, and even depression. If we're, it was, I didn't want to get out of bed. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't care for um, I mean, I couldn't care for myself, never mind thinking about other people. But I think I had at that time, my son was 5, and I knew that I had to be there for him, number one. And I knew that deep down inside, even if I had to try to find it, I knew that life is still going to go on and that I could still go on.
Mhm.
And for myself, prayer was a big factor. I had a big faith, a lot of faith support. And so that kept me going as well. And my family was huge support for that as well. Um, but you know what? I believe taking that time and just allowing yourself to be where you are at that moment. Because if you don't, and you are in a burnout phase or are in a um, where you feel you have nothing left and you keep going, you are going to completely burn yourself out. And that is where you start getting, the resentment starts coming in, and all of that kind of stuff starts coming in, even with work. And y- when that happens, you are kind of past that point of even trying to find that compassion. So taking that time for yourself is so important. But again, it was my son, and I loved what I did. I loved working with these youth, and I knew some days when I went to work, they were actually the ones that lifted me up. Some of the funny things they said or told me, you know what, you're not doing that right. Let me show you how to, on the computer or on the phone or whatever it was, the newest thing. So they also helped to kind of bring that gusto back. But I knew there was more to life for me, and I knew I had a purpose.
Mhm.
And so again, yes, I did go through the that burnout side, but knowing that that impact that I knew I was to have out there, I didn't want to give up.
Mhm. I love that. I actually really enjoy teenagers today, the ones that I definitely am exposed to through my kids and family. It's funny, they're, I mean, I love them, so they're a reason for me to keep going, but also the way they see the world and their versions of compassion and empathy at such a young age.
Mhm.
It's the emotional intelligence, which is a bit of a curse because it makes them very aware of things, but also it gives me hope because I'm like, the world's going to be okay. We just need to get them into their 20s and 30s so they start taking over. Like,
It's beautiful, like to
yeah,
watch. And even I
yeah.
think, maybe even with your 15-year-old to kind of see the different things that they're aware of and catching on to. And, or even my son will come up and go, Mom, are you okay? And I'm thinking, okay, you know what? Even though I thought I wrecked him at the beginning, with the divorce and all this stuff, because we do, as moms, we go through guilt. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, did I wreck my kid? But seeing that, you know what? I don't want him to lose that. I want him to build on that. And one of the things that was very important for me is I wanted to learn what his love languages were because
Mhm.
I think we all make assumptions like, well, just buy our kids stuff and they'll be happy. And so I did the quiz for teens online, the love languages for teens. And I had a suspicion what it was, but it was quality time.
Mhm.
And he could care less about all the other stuff. And so when he actually came and talked to me and asked me, "Are you okay?" That was kind of his way of, opening up, "Hey, mom, you know what? Let's talk." And so when I became really aware of that, man, was that pretty, again, beautiful to be able to see him expand in his emotional intelligence and expand
Mhm.
in his the empathy and compassion and all that kind of stuff.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, like figuring out what the behavior looks like for them. Like we say something like, "Well, I'm trying to support you." But we're not always asking them, what does support mean to you? What does it look like? If I say I support you, what behavior do you want for me to say that supports you? Because for some people it could be words of encouragement, and for others it could be you need to show up and be there beside me when I do it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really digging into who they are as individuals. I really, really, really like that. The
Yeah.
quality time too is for me, that's been a big game changer with opening up the conversations, just like you mentioned, because I feel like when I call it body doubling, like when you're just with them and doing something beside them, that's when they start talking.
Hmm.
You don't even have to ask. All of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, by the way, today at school or so and so, like, or you ask
Yep.
like, oh, how's your friend so? And then all of a sudden it all comes out because there's not this like interrogation feel like, let's have a chat, right? Like
Yep.
it's so different. And what advice would you give to parents that maybe are struggling with trying to find ways to get some of these conversations going with our children, or to find out if they are struggling with pressure or mental health or bullying? How can what advice do you have for parents
So
to
I've got
connect with their
a
children? Yeah.
few things. And one of the things you brought up with that body doubling, I love that term
Mm.
actually of it because uh, many of our kids game. And I roll my eyes because I don't know gaming. I don't understand it. And you know what? My goodness, if somebody put a joystick in my hand, it's not a joystick anymore. I guess it's a controller. Okay, that I just aged myself. A controller. I'd sit and stare at this thing, and if I press something, I'd probably press the wrong one. But to take 10 minutes and say, if your kid's a gamer, and go down and say, you know what? Can you teach me and show me how to do this? And you roll your eyes all you want inside, don't do it out. But that 10 minutes for your kid is the most amazing and valuable 10 minutes because they will teach you, they will show you, they might not talk about what's going on or whatever, but you have now just taken down a barrier that they're valued and that your time that you're spending with them is important. So that is something that is huge. And that could be either driving to and from school, or I call it windshield time, right? Where nobody
Hmm.
has to look at each other as you're talking. You just stare
Yes.
straight,
The car.
but you just talk. And that's one of the biggest things with my son now, because he's going to be driving. I'm like, oh, I'm going to miss that time with him that I could, that he would just talk about whatever. So that's really, really important. Another one is just no judgment. And this is when I tell the parents the no judgment and active listening, you know what? Just to shut up, like zip your lips. And I know that's not a nice word, but there's no other way to put it.
No.
Because again, when we have something to say that our kids are talking to us about, our listening stops because we know what we want to say. This is what we're going to do. And then the judgment is put in there as well. And we might not even realize that it comes across as judgment, but to our youth, it can come across very easily as judgment. So just be quiet and listen. A lot of times they don't need or want advice. And I think that's where, again, communicating and saying, look, um, when you talk to me, do you want me to say anything or give you advice, or you just want me to listen?
Hmm.
And I think giving our kids that option is huge. Somebody asked me, well, how can we have boundaries and show empathy with boundaries? And I said, well, you know what? It comes even to the fact of, when we used to choose clothes for our kids, many times we would give them two or three outfits to choose from. And there was the boundary, right? Here's the three outfits you get to choose, but your child has the option and the decision of what they want to wear.
Hmm.
So, that kind of thing with the boundary, and even the fact of if your kids, for coming home late, you know what? You can come home at 10 or 10:30. What would you like to choose? Right? Well, of course, you're going to choose 10:30 because it's later, but they have been given an option to be able to choose. So just really, really, again, active listening, the non-judgment, creating a safe space. And again, that could be like going down and gaming, right? Or even just at home where you just sit on the couch or play a game or someplace though, and even asking your child, what does a safe space look like for you? Because that
Hmm.
might be their bedroom. So that might mean you going into their room and just, I'll get a text from my son. It sounds terrible, but
No
at night
biggie.
he's like, okay, mom, hey, I really want to talk. Can you come downstairs? Okay. And I know that this is his safe space and this is the time where, bleh, right? It's just all going to come out. But taking that
Nighttime.
time, right? And I think even as adults, you said that with even asking our kids what that looks like, we can't even ask adults, what does a safe space look like for you? Or and how can we do it to our kids if we can't even do it to an adult?
Yes, when you talked about love languages, it made me think of something. So I have a bit of it's called a theoretical personality. So I'm very much like information is important to me. That's how I feel connected. If someone shares things with me, I feel like they're my best friend in the whole world. If someone says, "Oh no, you don't need to know that," I feel like, "What, you don't trust me?" Like it's a thing. And everybody's
Yes.
different. We all have
Yep.
different motivators and that. So knowledge is one of mine. That's what makes me feel connected. And that's also why I'm an oversharer. And 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 so it's really funny because even with adults, like in family dynamics and relationships, I have to remember that not everybody is that way and they don't feel like everything is a need to know basis. So for
Yeah.
instance, my oldest not finally, they have their first like job at a retail environment. I'm like, so they show up to work, they start the job. I'm like, okay, so what's your schedule? I don't know. Did you give them your information for your bank? Do you know when you get paid? No. I figure they'll let me know when it's time. I was just like, stay calm. They don't feel like they need to know. It's okay. Let them live their life. Let them like it's
Yep.
okay. Like,
It's
okay.
hard though.
Meanwhile,
It's
I'm like,
so
can
hard.
I text your boss and find out what
I
you
know.
make? Just 'cause- But like it's like they're like, no, the information will unfold as it needs to. And sure enough,
Yep.
of course it does, right? So it's again, it's just a personality thing. And so it's to remember that we have differences. And so my kids know that I like a lot of information. So now they're like, do you need to know something? I'm like, yes, please,
But
please.
see that, and there,
Yeah.
that has opened up the communication. And sometimes though, and I'm guilty of this too, is I don't want my child to get hurt or,
Mhm.
something to happen that, like they don't get paid or whatever. But I think the first time that all of a sudden they don't get a paycheck when they're expecting it, it's going to be like, huh, what do I need to do? And again, it's allowing them, and it's hard, but it's the tough love. It's allowing them to grow so that we don't have to be literally hand feeding them till they're 30, right?
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. And I would love to know what your thoughts on this. One of the things that I've always encouraged the kids to do, not just because I'm theoretical, but I allow them to question me. So like if they're like, that feels hypocritical or that doesn't ring true, or I don't understand what your intention is with telling me that answer, I allow them to ask me questions. I don't mean like slam the door, be like, I'm not listening to you. I mean like I allow them, they're like, can you please explain why you think that's okay? Like I allow them to be questioning because I want them to go into environments where they're not just trusting someone that is modeling authority. I want
Mm.
them to be able to critically think. What do you think about that? Do you allow
I love
your
that.
children to question as well? Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I think it's beautiful in the fact that, man, I've been using that word a lot today, but it just
It's
comes
okay.
across that the relationship and the communication that you have with your kids is open and it's engaging. And why shouldn't we allow our kids to question us? We don't know everything. And it allows them to, honestly, if they don't agree with something we say, well, mom, why? Why are you telling me that I need to do this or that it's important to you? Because it gives them another aspect of something that maybe they never even thought about. And
Yeah.
it's just like us when we kind of question our kids, well, why would you do something like that? Or what's your thinking behind that? Again, maybe we would not never think of it, whether it's weird, goofy, or whatever it is. But it actually might be something where we go, you know what? I never actually thought of that. And that's actually pretty cool.
Yes.
So I think that that is amazing that you are doing that. And I think that not enough parents do that because a lot of us were raised where you don't question. And even in law, like even with the police, when I go and do presentations to especially some of our newcomers, um, people who have had very negative interactions with the police, even youth that have had negative interactions, you are allowed to ask questions. Now, will the answer? I mean, I don't know, but you can ask, why am I getting pulled over? Or why did you stop? Like, and a lot of times it's, well, this is an area where, drug dealers are, there's a lot of drug dealing going on and it's 11:30 at night and you guys are under the age of 16, you're walking around, we just want to find out. Perfect.
Are you
You got your
serious?
answer, here it is. But the one thing that actually the big thing I've learned, we make assumptions about our youth, no matter who you are, and our youth make assumptions about us. But very rarely do we come together and communicate about these assumptions, right? We don't know somebody's having a bad day or somebody's just passed away or something like that, or you've had a fight with your spouse and you go to work and all hell breaks loose. Nobody knows. But you know what? That's where kind of that empathy and compassion to if somebody's getting a ticket, put yourself in their shoes. Or if your kid, something's happening with your kid, put yourself in their shoes. How would you hope that somebody would treat you and talk with you if you
Mhm.
were in this situation?
Yes. Just remember, everybody is human. It is human.
And we're
So
all
would
going
you
through stuff,
absolutely all
right?
the time, all
Yeah.
the time, all the time. I like humor as well. So if my kids are arriving, I'm like, what do you guys want for dinner? And they're like, I don't care. I'm like, oh, so you want beef then? Is that like
That's also our Brussels sprouts. We're going to do Brussels
yeah,
sprouts tonight.
you don't care? You're getting the worst thing I can think of. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you. So would you like to share a little bit about your book and where people can find it and how they can connect with you and any other services you offer?
Yes. So here's the book. I don't know if can you,
Yep.
it's Youth Truth, Engaging in Conversations That Can Change Lives. And it is on Amazon. It is also through Ingram Spark. So all bookstores can order it in. You can find me at www.carlamaysheremata.com. Email is carlamay@carlamaysheremata.com. Um, I I do consulting as well, so working with parents through tough situations if they've got issues with their young kids. I've even worked with executives on how to engage with this new generation and how to communicate with this new generation and what that looks like. Where the phone has always been now for them, that's what they go on, where face to face is very different for them.
Mhm.
So working with executives on that, and just sometimes just having somebody there to run an issue through, or to say, hey, this is what I've been going through. How, what does that look like? Or is there other ways that I can work through this? And this book gives a number of tools for anybody that has youth in their life, as well as if you have a 30-year-old kid that you're still like, I don't get you. Like, I'm not understanding you. There's tools in here that can help you engage even with your older kids. Grandparents, aunts, and uncles, huge benefit because you guys all don't realize how special you are for your grandkids and your nieces and nephews to come forward. They will tell you things that they don't want to tell their parents. So for you to realize and know how to navigate through that is so, so important.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any last words of advice or wisdom or encouragement you would love to leave the audience with?
You know what? My biggest thing, so my company is called Diamond in the Rough. And the reason I did that is each one of us has a diamond. And no matter how much trauma, pain, trials we've been through, it gets tarnished. And all it takes is one person to start shining and polishing up that diamond to get a little bit of sparkle and shine out. And that is what we're put on this earth to do, is to help people to shine and to better themselves. And so just being kind and polishing off that diamond, because many of us don't even know sometimes how we can shine.
Mhm.
And when we start to shine in certain ways, it is miraculous of what can happen and what we can do as a person. So that's one of the things that I fully believe in.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we sometimes worry that hate and toxicity is contagious, and yeah, it is, but so is love. Love is
Yes, and
absolutely
kindness. Oh,
contagious.
kindness is so contagious.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time, Carla May. It's
Thank
been a pleasure
you.
speaking to you. Let's do this again soon.
Will do. Thanks so much.